She's traveled tens of thousands of miles, building a grassroots army across Texas. Millions of dollars raised, 56,000 donors. MJ Hegar for Senate, the leader Texas needs now more than ever. She holds the most promise for voters tired of the failing DC politics. Her military experience makes her the fighter Democrats need. A disruptor who can bring the fight, and a unifier who can reach across the aisle to get things done. And as MJ kicks into gear, Texas does too. Voter registration to 16.4 million despite the pandemic. And Texas is moving towards Democrats in the ratings.
She's ready to fight in Washington.
MJ Hegar has been the top fundraiser by a relatively healthy margin.
It is a different race. She has a good story, and I think it makes for a compelling race in 2020.
One of the top fundraisers in the state.
Wait. Hold on. You didn't think I was going to let John off that easy, did you?
Then there's John Cornyn with an approval rating underwater.
He's been sort of an invisible man in Washington.
We see some favorability ratings that don't look so good. You're actually lower than President Trump, the governor, and Ted Cruz.
And the coronavirus?
Well, I think China is to blame because the culture where people eat bats and snakes and dogs and things like that.
The president has, I think, led well.
If you don't have any symptoms of the coronavirus, there's not a great reason to get tested. No one under the age of 20 has died of the coronavirus. That we still don't know whether children can get it and transmit it to others.
That's ridiculous.
Well, welcome to the general election, John. A brutal Texas re-election battle. Your toughest race yet in a changing Texas, and your last.
Are you concerned at all with all this talk about Texas turning blue?
Well, I sure am.
Saddle up, Texas, because the Senate race is in full swing.
Texas is the biggest battleground state.
And in 2020,
we have the opportunity to turn our state blue
up and down the ballot. We have the opportunity to expand access to affordable health care, finance our public schools, strengthen our economy, and take meaningful action on gun violence. There's so much more in the United States Senate.
We have the opportunity to pave the way towards a more sustainable future at the Texas Railroad Commission.
We have the opportunity
to elect judges
and the justices
who will restore fairness, equality,
and balance
in our courts.
We have the opportunity to shape the political future of Texas
and repair the broken systems that disenfranchise working families in our great state.
We have the opportunity to ensure that Texans in positions of power
embrace empathy,
open minds,
and swing open the doors of possibility.
By working together
and uniting behind our shared vision of a more inclusive world,
we will win back our state.
We will win because we have to.
We have to put an end to the hate, the lack of access, and the suffering.
We have to deliver on the fair shot that every Texan deserves.
Our cause,
our movement,
is about the restoration of justice and the expansion of opportunity.
None of this can be accomplished unless we work together.
In order to bring lasting change to Texas,
we must work alongside every down-ballot candidate, every activist, and every Texas Democrat to continue building the largest democratic movement our state has ever seen.
We're asking you to be a part of this historic fight.
Together, we will create a Texas that we can all believe and thrive in.
Together, we will save Texas and in turn, save the entire country.
Join us.
Join us. John, we need to talk. It's just not working out.
Senator Cornyn, you misled us on the coronavirus.
You voted against funding for masks and ventilators.
And you're still trying to take away protections for people with pre-existing conditions.
It's not us, Senator.
It's you.
You won't fight for us.
And we found someone who will.
I'm MJ Hegar, and I approved this message because 18 years
Welcome everyone to today's roundtable featuring Black women and our incredible state Senate candidate, MJ Hegar. I'd like to start by thanking MJ and our incredible panelists who I'll introduce shortly for making some time and joining us in the midst of early vote. You'll see some of us are coming from the road, some of us are coming straight from the polls, and just grateful for everyone to be here. Texas Democrats have gone all in like we never have before because this fight is for our communities. Texas is the biggest battleground state, and Black voters, especially Black women, are the largest group supporting the party. In 2020, Democrats are fighting harder than ever because we know that victory is within our reach. This is the year we turn Texas blue. We're going to kick Donald Trump and John Cornyn out of office. We're going to flip the Texas State House, and we're going to protect our communities. Thank you all for being here, and let's win in November. To get things started, I would like to introduce Dr. Carla Braley, Vice Chair of the Texas Democratic Party, for a few words on the importance of this race and today's discussion.
Thanks, Serita, very much. I'm going to thank you, but also want to just constantly thank the staff for not only all of our campaigns in the state of Texas, but particularly our staff at Texas Democratic Party. We have the best staff ever because they put up with me. Anyway, I just also want to thank everyone for attending today. You could be doing a lot of things, but you're here with us, and you're here with us because this means a lot to you. It means a lot to MJ. It means a lot to the campaign that we talk about matters that are particularly related to Texas, and particularly of concern to Black women. This is the most important election that Texas has ever seen. We are working to win big in November. Texas is the biggest battleground state. If we didn't know that before, I am certain through all of the ads and everything that is happening in Texas, both at the polls, grassroots organizing, we know that now. Donald Trump loses when pitted head to head with Joe Biden, our candidate. Joe Cornyn is underwater. And guess what? MJ is going to rescue us. How Black women are leading these efforts all over, we see the amount of organizing and mobilizing that's happening, not only to push us to the poll, but that is happening all year long. And they have been working not only with me, but many of our candidates. Women Winning Texas produced over 11 hours of content and raised more than $55,000. It was with women, all women. And we had a seat at the table with Black women that talked about their experiences, highlighting what they have been able to do. 50 Black women are running for office across the state. 5 of them are in statewide campaigns. The power of Black Women Network is powerful, and their ability to organize keeps us in the race. And I say this as Vice Chair of the Texas Democratic Party. It helps us to know what is about to happen in Texas. We're turning Texas blue, Serita. We're going to do it. And I want to just take the time. Serita doesn't always just introduce herself, but I do want to say a few words about Serita. She is our Black constituency organizer who works really across the board. She will help us to just guide us in conversation today. She supports Black women, and she ensures that we are dismantling issues or highlighting issues that have not always been addressed. Currently, she not only serves as our constituency organizer, she helps to organize faith-based populations as well as various populations related to our young professionals. Serita is known as a change maker because of her ability to advocate for marginalized communities. She builds coalitions and lead organizations. Serita has a unique insight into how the personal becomes political, which she incorporates in all of her work. And I am so happy to be able to work with Serita, and just take it from here, Serita.
Thank you so much, Dr. Brailey, for those kind words and for always including me in the incredible work that you're doing with the party and all across the state. I am excited to be joined by State Senate candidate MJ Hegar and a truly incredible panel of guests. Just to give a little overview, our guests include Dr. Carla Braley, Vice Chair of the Texas Democratic Party and an Assistant Professor of Sociology at Texas Southern University. We have Chevalier, a veteran of corporate America turned chef and entrepreneur. She combines her technology background with culinary arts as the CEO of the Cook's Nook. We have Houston Council member Dr. Letitia Plummer, a successful business owner with a consistent record of community service. She is also a dentist, a volunteer, and a mom with deep roots in the Bayou City. And finally, we have Tracy Scott, who is the president of Black Women's PAC and the campaign manager for Lisa Simmons for Texas House State Rep 94. Before we get into our roundtable discussion, I would love to hear from State Senate candidate MJ Hegar.
Thank you so much, Serita. I am running for the U.S. Senate, though, and I am so excited to be with this amazing group of powerful women. Serita, aren't you also a military veteran?
I am from a military family.
Military family.
So, yes.
Right.
So
yeah.
I know
Well,
Air Force,
thank you
know them well.
So much for everything you and your family do to continue serving our communities. I look on this panel and I see my dear friends. We have had a lot of these conversations and some of them have been public, and like this one that I'm really excited about. But I can't wait, y'all, until we are in a place again where we can do this in person. And I know I've seen Dr. Plummer and Dr. Brailey recently in person, but more often and in a way where we can give big hugs, because it's been killing me out on the campaign trail. I'm a hugger. People come up and they want to take pictures and I want to hug them. Anyway, I miss y'all and it's good to see you. And Tracy, thank you so much for being here too. You know, y'all, I just want to say I am committed to fighting to ensure that Texas is a place where, regardless of race, folks have equal opportunity to build good lives for their families. And for far too many Black Texans, this is just not the reality. I know that today there are many people watching also that have felt like their votes were taken for granted. They were made promises that were never fulfilled. It's why it's so important for me to not just have events where I'm talking to people, but to show, because I really truly believe you can tell a lot about how someone will act once they hold an office by how they act while they get there, right? And so it's really important that I'm not just talking, but I'm hearing and listening to the perspectives of amazing people like these powerful women, many of whom have become my dear friends. But I am committed to uplifting the voices of Black Texans and Black women. We have 4 amazing Black women candidates running for the state house that I am really excited to be supporting and lifting up. And, you know, I think that that's how we're going to be able to deliver the much needed results that we've been waiting for so long in Texas, whether it's healthcare inequities, including being the state with one of the worst maternal mortality rates for Black women in the entire country, to police brutality, to lack of access to economic capital. Black communities here in Texas are some of the hardest hit and least supported. And to address these challenges, we need to elect leaders that are committed to showing up and fighting, not just during campaign season, but while they're in office. And sadly, we just haven't gotten that from our current senators. So I know that we can't win without Black voters. I can't, more importantly, can't legislate and lead and can't represent this state without the input and guidance of Black Texans. And it's so important, especially in light of everything that's happened this year, not to just to ask for votes, but to actually earn them. And, you know, I feel like this is a group that I would love to just hang out with and talk to all the time. And I just get a great excuse of the fact that I'm running for office and get to convene a panel of advisory, powerful women. So thank you so much for giving us your time. And thanks for the people who are tuning in now and giving us your time and attention to this too, because the people in power are really hoping that we are going to take our eye off the ball. They're hoping we're going to give in to intimidation and voter suppression, and that we're not going to hold them accountable for their failures. And me and the women on this panel are not going to let that happen. So really excited about today's conversation.
Thank you so much. And we're so grateful to have you here. As we've said, we're in the middle of early vote and Texans are turning out in record numbers. To get things started, though, with our conversation, I just wanted to mention that all across the nation, people are calling for major changes to our criminal justice system. To start, as Black women, how does this impact you? And then MJ, I would love to hear your thoughts after as well.
So do you want us to go first? Okay.
Absolutely, I can, sure. So all across the nation, people are calling for major changes to our criminal justice system. As Black women, how does that impact you? And Dr. Brailey, if you'd like to start.
Oh, is that what you do when you ask someone to repeat the question? So, I think criminal justice for a long time has unfortunately had a negative impact, particularly on the Black community, impacting many mothers, their sons, their husbands. One, I'll just like to start with even the notion connected to police brutality, the school to pipeline situation where discipline has been disproportionate towards Black and brown students. Many of them are more likely to be to go through or experience suspension or some type of discipline in a way that is not apparent to their counterparts in terms of their peers. And the reality is, we can see that as a very isolated situation, while that should not be. The other thing is, some of the students are being raised by single mothers. So if their children are being suspended from school or isolated in a way that can have psychosociological issues, then that impacts her ability, a lot of times, her being the mother, to work, the mental health of that parent. So when we look at the impact even on, I say, marijuana charges, we look at how we are looking at that as a policy today, and just think how many Black and brown people, particularly males, were impacted by that and now are a part of of being incarcerated. And just on something like that alone, we can probably have a whole dialogue on that. So unfortunately, the disproportionality of the impact that the criminal justice policies have had on Black and brown communities, particularly Black males, and specifically right now, we've had such an increase of Black women in the prison industrial complex. So much of that, the labor that's oftentimes tied to what incarcerated individuals go through. Even when we look at COVID, how that impacted those who were incarcerated. So I'll stop there because I'm sure, others want to, have input on that, but definitely has had a great impact on the economics and the mental capacity, particularly on Black women as well.
Yeah,
I'll add on. Oh, go ahead, Joy.
Oh, go ahead, Tracy.
I was going to just say, I'll add on and agree, with Dr. Brailey, and looking at the number of households, again, of Black men that grew up without fathers, homes that were, and for decades, this has been an issue in the Black community, and that the men have always been targeted. And this just goes to speak to, ages of our economic stronghold, or what supports us and what supports every other community, brown, white, Asian, Indian, all of their families are still intact for majority. And majority of our families are not. And that is a huge piece that goes to the criminal justice system. And, when you look at the news where, a gentleman was released from prison for stealing a pair of hedge clippers and got life, and we're now 24 years later and he's being released, and you're thinking, okay, for over 24 years, he has not been a part of society. His mother, if he had a wife, if he had a sister, whatever he would have provided to the household was just removed completely, and his legacy. So I just tack on to Dr. Brailey and say how intensely destructive the criminal justice system has been to Black families for decades. Yeah. And that is just, a very, very big piece of how we are behind, why we are behind, and how we will continue to be behind until those men are restored and, our community is refreshed with Black men who are, stable and not targeted.
Yeah, I would just quantify that, right? Having run for, the office of comptroller, I tend to think see things as how does it affect the budget of the state, and what does that sort of mean? And when you talk about annually hundreds of $1 million that are lost in the Texas economy to those who cannot participate, who are not allowed to be reintegrated, who are not allowed to contribute back into the state economy because of social or corporate or because of procedural requirements, that's a detriment to the state when there's no reason not to have the conversation with them to be able to allow them to give them a real path to do that quickly. By keeping folks out and keeping them restricted, to Tracy's point, all you're doing is continuing a lack of generational wealth, right? That money does not come back into families. It does not come back into households. You don't get to restart that engine in any way, shape, or form. You don't start that cycle between the household, the state, and the household and family again. And you've completely broken it, and you've broken that cycle, and a loss into the community. And so there's no bonus here. There's no win here, right? Not to the kitchen table, not to the community, and not to the state. And so, we talked about the social aspects, the cultural aspect. There's a real tangible budgetary and financial aspect here too. That bringing real criminal justice reform is essential. It's essential, and it's now.
Mm-hmm. And I guess I'll jump into that. I appreciate what everyone said. I mean, I love that we're all touching points that are a bit different. I'm going to touch on just the municipal control that we do have, the lack of guidance we've gotten from the federal government, and definitely a lack of guidance we got from the state. We talk about the end result, right? That's our people, our Black and brown people that end up in the criminal justice system. But we often don't really talk enough, in my mind, about what got them there, or the lack of. And so, what we really need to focus on is how do we make sure they have housing? How do we make sure we create some equity with education? Why, based on zip code, does one school have computers and laptops and iPads and the other one barely has books? How do we make sure we feed our kids good food to allow them to be good students? How do we keep our Black fathers out of jails and at home so they do have that foundational support and release the pressure from single Black moms that lead as single head of households? Those are the key issues. And honestly, I'm so glad I'm on this call with my sisters and hopefully our future senator. But I will say this, y'all, I am tired of having this conversation. I'm over it at this point. And MJ, I'm putting you on the spot. I'm tired of electing people that don't do anything about it. And I'm just being very honest. I feel like it's a small group of people that we can be authentic and transparent with each other. But it is time to get this thing done and stop having the conversation. We know what the problems are. We've had enough task forces and meetings and groups and side conversations and all that. We've got to take it from the political space and really put money into the areas that need it, level everything up, and then we can invest across the board in all of the communities. But this conversation is devastating. It's not new that our Black men lead in jails. That's not new. It's not new that the only reason people elected to office is because Black women vote them in. That isn't new. We know all that already. So let's just get this thing done. We know what we need to do. We know the implications financial. I love what you said, Joy, about the implications from a statewide lack of resource perspective. You're dead on that. And honestly, I feel like because we lead in the population base, 75% or 74% of Texans are minority, that's power. In a lot of ways, the best way to keep everyone in their box is to make sure you have the resources and access. I mean, just within COVID, one of five minority businesses are never going to reopen again. Black women lead in entrepreneurship, yet we are the lowest on the totem pole in terms of getting resources. I personally had to combine my dental practices together because I couldn't continue to float my Houston office. And I've been practicing for 22 years, and I can't go to the bank and get a loan. I mean, that's just unheard of. And so, and I'm one of the lucky ones because at least I'm in an industry that does do well. The industry does do well. We are able to kind of survive certain things. But what about what about our other stores and shops and restaurants and
how about food?
And food, yeah. I mean, it's a big problem. And so right now, what we need to focus on, in my mind, is we need to focus on making sure that Black women hold our elected officials accountable. And we don't vote for them unless we know they're going to get them done. And when they don't get it done, when they promise they're going to do it, then we make sure we stay in their faces the entire time they're in office and they don't get reelected. Because I'm honestly tired of the conversation. And I have 3 Black boys I send out every single day, and I don't know if they're going to come home. You know, and that's very, very uncomfortable. And although white women can understand and try to empathize what we're going through, until you're in the steps and feet and shoes of a Black woman, you have no idea what we deal with. We have to work harder than everyone else. We have to be smarter than everyone else. We have to be more perfect than everyone else. And to a lot of levels, it's unfair when we're the reasons why this economy stays afloat. And we're the reason why things get done and people are elected to office. So I'm kind of on fire today, y'all, so excuse me. But it's game time.
I think we're on fire every day right about now, right? I mean, because you're watching it, you're watching an administration and you're watching a colluding state senator who just ignores everything you just said. Right. I mean, and to come back to criminal justice reform, I mean, you know, they would like to tout, you know, a First Step Act that was woefully underfunded. I mean, you don't give a federal mandate that is supposed to, you know, discuss, you know, improve sentencing mandates to improve criminal justice, and then say, and give it only $14 million in budgetary allocation. It doesn't work. You starved it. You had no intention for that to ever have worked. You know, and that's unfortunate. And that's what this federal administration has done, and that's what this state senator has done, and that's unacceptable. That's just unacceptable.
I'll just say, MJ, yeah, and let's I'm gonna go Letitia today because you don't Letitia, you don't even need the title right now. But I just really appreciate where you are, because at any given time, we can address this from so many different spaces that we are expected to be in and expected to smile, because God forbid if we show any emotion other than a smile, because that means we're angry. And you know, if you're not angry about this, then actually, what do you get angry about? Really. So I really appreciate that space and what you where you kind of talk from today, because I think, MJ, that really that's the it factor there. Like when you get elected, and all of us on this call are working hard, you're the top of our ticket. That means so much for us to get you there. And so my thing is, you know, it's really about, we could almost have the conversation, MJ, where you know, how will you make room in the spaces that you're going to be in? And what I have found, that we have to be very unapologetic and intentional about it. Like, did you not call Carla? Like, why did I enter this room and Carla's on here? Like, staff even gets to know, oh my God, you know, they have the list. Like, this is the list. And that's what I think will be really good, you know, to get from a call like this. Is really the foresight, you know, it's the it factor that you're going to be, you know, our senator. And what does that look like? And what role could we play in advice, you know, providing the advice that you need, but also your support. Yeah.
And what do you carry with you? Yeah.
Yeah.
So I am always loath to stop you though, because it's all such good stuff. And I'm gonna repeat that. I'm gonna carry that. I'm gonna go Letitia on you now. So because I love that so much. And Dr. Plummer, you know, that's why I value our relationship so much, is because you do put me on the spot. Because I have said to y'all before, and I'll say again, please, I need you to hold me accountable, because I want to actually be effective, and I can't be effective surrounded by a bunch of yes men and women. All right. I can only be effective when people are putting me on the spot and saying, holding me accountable. And that is the only way we can do this, because I'm not going to go legislate by myself, y'all. And there's more to it than just legislating. I can't lead by myself. That's the military leadership style. I mean, Joy knows, as Joy's a veteran, I can't accomplish the mission alone. I need y'all with me. And I would say, you said, how am I going to create a space for this? I mean, it's the work that we've been doing months ago, dare I say like a year ago, well, years ago, if you count Joy's in my relationship, but we just have to have these relationships built, and more than just kind of Facebook Live conversations. It's the behind the scenes work that gets done. And I'm with you, Dr. Plummer, that I'm tired of having some of the same conversations over and over again. And at the same time, with the social justice moment in this country, I keep saying how happy I am that the things that we have been fighting for years, y'all longer than me, but me at least for the last 3 or 4 years have been fighting for, are finally becoming mainstream. And that, yes, it seems like we're having the conversation a lot, but at least we're having the conversation, but we got to do so much more than talk. And my impression of the groups and the people I've met with across the state, one of the first questions I ask is, because y'all know me, I'm not into like selective outrage and like whatever John Cornyn's doing, I want to do the opposite. If he's doing anything good, I want to know about it. So I go into these groups and I say 2 questions, not only what can I do better than what you currently have, but is there anything good going on that you need me to continue? And generally what I get back is, no, John Cornyn, if he shows up at all, shakes his head and says, yep, I hear you. And then he goes back to DC and it translates into no action. That's the part that we're missing. We're having a conversation. There's certain things that are acknowledged. And let's be clear, there are certain things not acknowledged. Cornyn continues. He said it on the Senate floor and he said it during our debate that systemic racism doesn't exist. I think I could show the data to my 6-year-old and he wouldn't say that. I mean, it is very clear. I don't think he understands what systemic racism is. He said something along the lines of, for systemic racism to exist in criminal justice and policing, it requires that every cop be a racist. Well, first of all, I don't think he understands how everyone has implicit bias. Clearly, he's never taken, the diversity 101 training that most of us have, and that I think that everyone in the country should be taking. But it's more than that to me. It's if you can tell me that 90% of minority-owned businesses that applied for PPP loans didn't get them, if you don't understand that systemic racism is not one guy twisting his mustache who's declining minority-owned businesses and approving white-owned businesses, it is the system. It's the relationships with accountants and attorneys and the networks and the alumni and the nepotism and it is a system. Now the conversation started with criminal justice reform, and I want to acknowledge a couple of things really quick. That, when we look at the data, it's very clear that we have a systemic problem. And I don't believe that Cornyn doesn't understand it, because on the debate stage, we were asked a question about decriminalizing marijuana. And he answered it legalizing marijuana. And so I did my kind of rebut to the legalization of marijuana, which I support, but then I addressed the decriminalization. We're talking about an attorney who's been in statewide office for nearly 4 decades, who was a judge and is 18-year senator. He knows what decriminalizing means, but he gets so much money from the private detention centers that are profiting off of this epidemic of incarceration among communities of color disproportionately, and that criminalizing marijuana, which by the way, legalizing has so many benefits, whether it's tax revenue or treating PTSD or multiple other things, but that leaving it, criminalizing it has this disproportionate impact to communities of color. The fact that he doesn't acknowledge that and go in and do some root cause analysis is another example of systemic racism. So we need people that are at least going to acknowledge the problem, that are going to put their constituents first instead of their corporate donors like the private prisons, and to go into communities. Dr. Plummer, I don't want to misstate what you were saying. Was it you, or it might have been Dr. Brailey, who said, unless you've walked in my shoes? It was you, Dr. Plummer. Unless you've walked in my shoes, I will never get to a place where I can speak about these issues with the same level of expertise that you can with your boys. I know I'm a mom. I know with my boys, it was a gut punch to me when you said you're worried about them coming home safe. And as a pilot, as a woman in a predominantly male career field, I do know a small portion of how it felt to have to be the best and never be able to make a mistake, but it's nothing on the scale that Black women are facing. So there's not a way that I can legislate from a place of having walked in your shoes. That's why I need you with me. And so I think that we just need more servant leaders who understand that we need to build policy and put forward solutions based on, not just input, but collaborative leadership. Because these narcissistic politicians who think that they are better than everyone and that they know more than everyone and that their answers are going to come from their own heads about things like women's reproductive rights and Black women maternal mortality and all of those types of things isn't working for our country. So, there's a lot that I want to say about criminal justice reform, but I just think that, I don't want to take up more time because I want to hear what y'all have to say about the next couple questions. There's specifics that we could go into, but I also think that the problems that are requiring criminal justice reform and policing reform are symptoms of bigger, deeper problems with healthcare disparities, lack of access to business capital, education disparities, and some of the other things that hopefully, if I stop talking, we can get to next.
Thank you so much to all of our guests and to you, MJ. I think everyone touched on the fact that criminal justice, like so many topics facing Black community members, Black women, is multifaceted, right? It's not just a one solution problem. It is not something that will be fixed overnight. But the more that we tug at that thread and figure out, okay, what is causing this big ball of mess that is our criminal justice system, then the more work that we can do to undo those harms and change the trajectory for generations to come. And we've started to touch on this a little bit already, but would love to hear from folks. The maternal mortality rate in Texas is 13.9% for Black women, which is compared to the 6% for white women. What are some of the obstacles facing pregnant Black women? And how can we, again, continue to push our way forward? I will start with you, Dr. Plummer.
I think that's a great question. It still goes back to the lack of health equity. We don't eat well. We are typically working multiple jobs. Black women typically working multiple jobs, so they don't have an opportunity to do their well woman exams and the breast exams, and they don't have access to healthcare. A lot of our community healthcare centers are closing because of lack of funding. So it's just a lack of access, and we don't have good. In most of our Black and brown communities, we don't have a good grocery store. So when you are pregnant, it's expected for you to eat well and make sure you take care of yourself and exercise and those things. So it's really the basic foundational issues that are so easy for other communities of means that we don't have access to. And then you have to add a level of stress that we have on us, where we lead in single household incomes. We typically have multiple children. We are living in multi-generational households where we're the financial support for the whole house. And so it's so many other pieces that get us to a place to where we can have healthy children or get through childbirth in a healthy way, or even survive it. And so it's once again a conversation, and I'm so glad that so many of us have brought attention to it. But once again, if you put some clinics in our communities, if you make it accessible to us, if you make it to a point where we can afford to go there and get the treatment that we need, and if you allow us to take care of our bodies and ourselves and our minds, then we are going to be able to decrease those percentages, survive, and be able to be amazing mothers that we know that we can be.
And before we move on to the next panelist, I also want to add to what you're saying. It's important that we remember that traditional barriers that we think are indicators of health, wealth, health care, access to care, all of these things, even when we account for that, Black women are still dying, right? We heard from Serena Williams, Michelle Obama, Beyonce. And so I think to your point, Dr. Plummer, from earlier, and some of what we've all been saying is we have to look at these systemic issues that are making these things so challenging. Because for someone with, the wealth, the access, the means of a Beyonce to still be facing the exact same problems when it comes to maternal health care that a woman with much less is facing, then that tells me that there's so much more going on. Right. So even when we start to talk about mitigating, making sure that there are health centers so that things can be caught earlier, making sure that there is health insurance that will cover that care, right? We still have to look at, so what is making it so difficult to survive as a Black woman? So keeping that in mind, I want to open this back up to our panel, whoever would like to go first.
And let me just add one more thing, and I know it's not back and forth, but typically there are genetic issues that we deal with as Black people. They're genetics that we're fighting, you know what I'm saying? And so, yes, it's a lot more than just that piece of it, but because we know that we are more, we're more at risk of having high blood pressure and diabetes and things like that. Those things that we have to look at, beforehand. And that's why it's important to make sure that we have all of the things that I mentioned in place, because we know it is naturally more challenging for us. But we're also a very resilient race as well.
I just want to add to this conversation just one thing. MJ, if you could go into every meeting, conversation, or something with a little Post-it note that says, how does this affect Black women? And every time you walk in the door and every time you have a conversation, just how does this affect Black women? And just ask the question, or know before you walk in. But that would be such a big piece to, as Meg the Stallion says, protecting us. And, looking out for how does everything, because we carry everything. Mm-hmm. How does it affect us? What happens? Because if we're the largest voting bloc and blah, blah, all of that stuff is great. It's crazy. It's really great. But day-to-day life, how does it affect Black women? Because it's health, it's economics, it's student loan debt. I mean, and I'm only saying all of this now because I think I'm gonna have to jump off of this and go to a campaign call, and then hopefully I can jump back in just a few minutes. But I just really thank you for the conversation. So I really do, and for the opportunity to, just be together with all of you all and to be honest and have a safe space to really relay what's going on and how we feel and what it's like.
Well, thank you, Tracy, and I will do that, but I think I need to do a lot more than that. I need to get more Black women elected so that it's not me and my sticky note. Yeah. It's Black women who are asking that question, yeah. And instead of asking it and having nobody have an answer, have amazing Black women like the women that are on this panel and the women that we have on the ticket now, lifting them up and lifting up their voices, I think is the most important
Black
thing.
Women, and if I might add to, Black women that are not in majority minority districts. We want to see more Black women elected in diverse spaces, in diverse districts. Just not just in the majority minority. Of course we're going to elect our own. We want everyone to elect us. We want to serve, a diverse population. That's where we live.
And on staffs and committees.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, I just wanted to.
Okay. Go ahead.
I just want to add to Dr. Plummer's bit. I still want to come back to your point, Serita, that even amongst those who do have access, the question of medical bias in listening in the profession is it's a real thing, and it's a real thing when you can, even if you do go to a doctor and you're not heard, your definition of pain, your language of pain or confusion, or your definition of how you define your body or what's going on is not heard and not understood. Therefore, disease or other things are understood late or disbelieved. That's real. I mean, that's real in our own definitions, right? Because we do take on so much. So a definition of pain for us, by the time it is expressed, can sometimes be severe, right?
Thank you, Joy, for saying that. My own lived experience speaks to that. I remember giving birth to my daughter, and I had to get induced. And of course, they were monitoring my heart, my vitals. And for whatever reason, and I guess I should have known better even as a patient, but you're in the moment. One of the practitioners actually took the monitors off. And it was another nurse. And I'm speaking to this because I think it's also with training, how we develop our practitioners, right? And so I remember this moment like yesterday that she actually, she went to the doctor, because this was a nurse that checked the doctor to say, dear, don't you ever do this to one of my patients. This is not how we operate. That was a doctor just doing rounds, who were from 2 different institutions. And it was then I had to have an emergency, basically, I can't even think, a C-section. And it was because my daughter's heart rate was dropping. And it was in that moment that I saw them go back and forward, but it was not monitoring and how you're trained to do that. What are the procedures? And I think that, much of that is aligned with, Joy, what you said in terms of, that's still dealing with implicit bias and training, and those things are really connected. That when you see your patients in a very equitable way, right? Not, that's going past equality, but it's the equity in all of that. So
exactly. And being our own advocates and being in a position where you see yourself as not just patient, but consumer, and as your own advocate, and being in that position. Absolutely.
I know Dr. Plummer had to hop off. She has a council meeting. As we have all said, Black women are constantly doing more than one thing. We are multifaceted people, right? And so I want to be mindful of time and make sure we get through our topics. So I want to get to a question that I want to be sure that we address. We say this all the time. Texas isn't a Republican state. It's a non-voting state, where voter suppression is a major cause of that. How have y'all, in your own ways and within communities, been working to combat voter suppression and increase voter turnout? And then also, MJ, again, we'd love to hear from you how your campaign has been addressing this.
I'm sorry, did you want, yeah, you go ahead first, Joy.
Yeah, I'm gonna let you go last because you're awesome. So I was just gonna say, since I'm an old man on totem pole here, I was just going to say that since my run in 2018, I spent a lot of time with candidates, but from a voter aspect, I spent a lot of time these days. I'll be poll working this year. That's actually my focus, is to spend a lot of time at the polls. So I was telling Dr. Brailey this, I totaled it up. I'm actually spending 20 hours doing poll working over the next week and a half to ensure folks that things go well at various polls here in Austin, Central Texas area. And so that's where I'll be devoting most of my time this year. So that's specific to voters. Most of the time I'm spending my time working with candidates. So I still, I'm on the board of Amy's List and work with Progress Texas overall, but specific to voting, it'll be at the polls, making sure that they're safe spaces and operational spaces.
So I know we're short on time, and so I just want to jump in here with a couple things. There's so much we need to do for voter suppression, but I want to flag that Texas has recently been found to be the most restrictive state in the country. We have our votes being suppressed right now, which, by the way, are not the actions of people who think they're going to win, right? Is when they start changing the rules and trying to do everything they can to keep us from voting. I mean, have you met a Texan? Have you met a Texas woman, especially? You try to intimidate us out of doing something, it just motivates us to do it more. But I think we need to pass the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. I think that we need to flip the state house. A lot of our voter suppression comes from the state house. We need people to understand that, we have 30-day voter registration deadlines. A lot of states have same-day election day, up to election day. There are so many things logistically that our state officials have put in place to suppress our votes: gerrymandering, different types of voter IDs, closing polling places, no online registration, that logistically we could easily do. And if we can't, shame on you, because I was raised to believe that if any state can do something, Texas can do it better. There's no excuse other than you're just trying to suppress our votes. But the people are overcoming that. We see that. We have had more people vote in the first week of early vote of a 3-week process. And usually, traditionally, half the vote comes on election day. We've had more people vote than half of the 2016 election already. And that is something I'm so proud of to be a part of. And so it's kind of a cart before the horse thing. It's like, what do we have to do? We have to fight the legal battles that we can fight leading up to an election, but we have to win by enough to overcome the voter suppression and then get into a position to change it. And we can do that. I believe we can do that. I believe we are doing that. But we need, people like y'all on this panel doing amazing work. We need people like y'all that are tuning in to get out and vote, and make sure you tell your entire community. And when you go vote, bring 5 people with you, and make sure you're seeking out curbside voting and letting elderly and disabled people know that that's available in different places. We just have to stand together. There are very powerful people trying to stop us. And I keep saying this because it's so important. You can't let that intimidate you, because we're more powerful than them. They're running scared because they know what I know, which is there are more of us than there are of them. And when we stand together and we vote and we demand and we put forth pragmatic solutions to the challenges that we're facing, and we have the receipts and we look and see where your donors are coming from and things like that, that's when we get real change. And it's a lot of hard work, and it's a lot of grunt work, and there's a lot of unsung heroes in the party and across the state and volunteering for campaigns that are just putting endless hours into phone banking and texting and turning out the vote. And I feel every day that anytime I want to take a break, I think about those people, and I'm like, I haven't earned a break. I need to get back to work, because Lord knows I can feel them working across this state. And I'm so proud to be a part of that. I'm proud, to have friends like y'all, and thank you for putting this panel together. I wish we had another couple of hours, because I wanted, we need to talk more about voter suppression and education. And I wanted to talk more about maternal mortality. I worked in healthcare for 5 years. I have a lot to say on that too, but I'm looking forward to more conversations like this, both on Facebook Live and behind closed doors, and after we win this race, as we are crafting policy and actual solutions that are collaborated on with community leaders like y'all. So thank you so much for doing this with me today.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. This is how we get to see you now, MJ.
I know, Joy. Give me a big hug.
And another way to get over voter suppression is to vote.
That's right.
Yeah,
It's to vote.
It's to vote.
And so I'm just so happy that we've had this today. And everything that you said today was on point. And I'm just glad that you're open and willing and just really know what are some of those issues that we will really have to deal with on day one. And I believe that you will be ready to deal with those issues on day one. So.
And thank you for always taking us along with you.
Don't ever leave me. I need you.
MJ, I think you are stuck with all of us. So.
Good. Thank you. Thank you all so much.
Thank you for spending some time today with us.
Absolutely. Thank you for doing this again, Serita. It's good to see you again.
Yeah.
Y'all take care and stay safe. All right. Keep kicking butt. Thank you so much.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Questions, you can head over to mytexasvotes.com. Everything you need to know will be there. You can also call us at our voter assistance hotline at 1-844-TX-VOTES. Thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you next time.